Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Denise Ravel from MediaScope. Welcome to the Live Friday chat. Today we're going to be talking about a very special topic as a follow-on to the open letter that I sent to the marketing, advertising and media industry 2 weeks ago today. The open letter was about the NBN and has had quite amazing both public and private feedback. Today I'm really pleased to be joined by two very special guests, and one very special guest who's actually trying to get in at the moment. We're blaming the NBN for the technical issues that he's having, but I'm sure Senator Scott Ludlam will be joining us very soon. We thought we'd start in the meantime. But thank you to Jodie Sangster from ADMA, CEO of ADMA. Thanks, Jodie. This is the second time you've joined me on a live chat, Jodie.
That's right. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And again, I apologise that our special guest hasn't been able to log on yet. We're still hoping. Ian McDonald, Chief Disruption Officer, Chair of AdTech Sydney. Mike Zed is giving you some good cheers there. Mike Zederberg. Exactly. And Ian, of course, very active, particularly in the digital communication space in our industry. Owned a digital marketing agency and consults businesses on their digital communication strategies, and no doubt have some good input on the NBN. So just to start us off, and hopefully Senator Ludlam will be joining us soon. And again, I apologise to those that have logged in to see him. You might be stuck with us for just a little bit longer. The NBN, as I said, I sent an open letter 2 weeks ago, amazing feedback. And really the aim of that open letter was just to create some awareness in our industry for the impact that inadequate broadband would have on, our capabilities. So I suppose to really start off, what I'd like to get from each of you, and Jodie, I'll start with you first, is the benefits of having good and adequate and world-class broadband connectivity. I think a lot of the conversation that I see is very critical of what we've got, but often doesn't look at the bigger picture of what we're perhaps missing out on.
Yeah. So you can kind of look from a couple of different perspectives. I think if you look at it from a marketing. Is it okay?
I'm downloading something in your office, Jodie, I think.
What was that? I was downloading something. Definitely off track already. Oh dear. So I think there's a kind of marketing, media, advertising, which I'll kind of cover off. But I think there's also a bigger picture here, which is, us as Australians and the extent to which our lives are going to be online very soon, and our ability to compete as an economy and really kind of stay at the leading edge. And the role that internet and broadband plays in that. So look, from a marketing, media, advertising point of view, I think the conversation at the moment, as Ian has said, is a lot around kind of download times. We talk a lot about the number of people that are on social media, and the kind of growing move to digital. And look, that goes without saying. We are, as marketers, absolutely moving into the digital world. And there are statistics out there from McKinsey and from others saying that 50% of our marketing spend is going to be in the next year or so in digital channels, and we're moving that way. The second part of that being we are so now focused on content, and content sitting at the heart of how we engage with our customers and have this relationship. A lot of that's around video, and again it's kind of putting much more pressure on the need to have great, whether it's upload or download capabilities that we don't have at the moment. So from a marketing perspective, even where we stand right now, we absolutely need to get this right, because we're only going to find that things are kind of moving much more in the digital, down the digital path, and we need to get this right. The part, just coming back in again, try one more time here. I think the next step of this, if we look at where we're going with marketing, media, advertising in the next 2, 3, 5 years, everything is moving to the cloud. Everything. So for us to be able to deliver to our customers we need this problem solved. Virtual reality is a reality. As much as it's kind of probably at the start of the conversation, this is where businesses are going. This is the experience that we want to be able to give our customers. And unless we've got the broadband capabilities, we're not going to be able to deliver on that. We're moving to the Internet of Things, and marketers play a big role in that. And that's how we're going to be reaching our customers into the future. And as consumers, we need that the capability to have the connection and the Internet of Things. But as marketers, that's the point of disruption that we'll be moving into as well. So we haven't got enough even to deal with where we are now, but moving into the future, it's going to get worse. And the next iteration of that is, it is not even about us as marketers, it's about us as businesses. And as businesses, we're going to be working remotely. We're going to be shopping online. We're going to be educating online. Education will be online. Every single thing that we do will be online. So it's kind of the full spectrum here that we're talking about. And when you're saying what are the benefits are from start to finish. We need this to run our daily lives, and we need this to remain competitive.
And I think that great point we're talking about now, but of course it has a much broader community issues and so on. Ian, from your perspective, am I a bit funny there on sound? Sorry.
Slightly cutting out.
Ian, from your perspective, what are the benefits that you see of having a fast broadband community and business world?
I think there's a few lenses that you can put on this topic. I think a lot of the debate currently has been around what the state of affairs is now. As we look forward to the next 5 or 10 years, I think the amount of change still to come is being dramatically underestimated. The potential use cases. So when we talk about 25 megabytes a second, 50 megabytes, is that enough? Is the real question. And I know the CEO of the NBN posed that the other day. I personally don't think it is. I think we're already struggling with what we've got, even if you have, and I have a connection which is equivalent to that on download, and I think anecdotally, just the number of times that my kids say to me when they're trying to play a game or something, "Dad, are you downloading something?" It's almost every other day. So we know that we have current issues that already with those sorts of limits. Now, in terms of what's still coming, we know some of the things that are still on the way. We know that there's the potential for VR, HoloLens, Internet of Things. It's probably more a lightweight sort of infrastructure to begin with, but we still don't know what it's going to turn into. And I think that's one of the critical things. If we wind the clock back 10 years to 2005 or 6 and try and predict what we've got now, it becomes a very hard solution. We've got a lot of things today that we just never anticipated. Back to your question, how does it affect everything? What do we get? I think from a consumer perspective, and if you break this down strategically, and I scribbled something, here we go, here's my little scribble. I think everything breaks down for the consumer into these three areas: content, engagement, and utility. And brands, agencies, and again, the agency world isn't just about advertising. It's a really critical thing to point out. We work with the industry, especially my company over the years. We worked to develop product. We worked with them to develop the infrastructure. It's not just about advertising. In our comms industry, we do a hell of a lot more. We have all the creative film industry, etc., behind us. So in terms of content, we know that there's going to be more content coming our way. In terms of utility, the number of things that we're going to be able to do that make our lives more useful, whether that's medical, whether that's banking, it doesn't matter what it is, they all are going to be much better, and they're all going to require more. Are they going to need that gigabit speed? Probably not to begin with, but we don't know what's coming still. Where it becomes really interesting is in that engagement corner, and that's what's really shifted over the last 10 years, the shift to being a more open, connected community, doing more things together. And not just, again, when you think about how we work as countries and across borders, we're all working a lot more closely across the timeline. So engagement on a number of levels. So from a consumer perspective, from the comms industry point of view, I think we have around 45% of all the jobs in our industry are now digital. Wind back 10 years, I think that we're probably talking about 5% of jobs are digital. So even if we take the industry in terms of jobs, we're looking at 50% of jobs that exist today not existing in 10 years' time. What are those jobs? Will they exist here? Is a real question for debate, and I think regardless of the NBN, the movement around innovation.org is a very good thing, and we need to have that conversation. We certainly have a very big problem around education, digital education, just as much as we have the NBN, and maybe one symptomatic of the other.
Exactly. I think it's really interesting to note today when I was promoting this live chat is how many people were saying to me that I would really like to log in and listen in and view in, but I can't because I can't even get Skype. So the thought of getting something like Blab is very difficult. And those people, yes, might have been in regional areas, but I think, Ian, you know, we just had some sound issues hearing you now, and we're obviously having some problems getting Senator Ludlam in. You know, this could all be quite well solved through better connectivity. So it's not an issue for us in the future. It's actually, I think, an issue for us now. And during the week, 60th in the world now, and we've dropped, almost 20 places in less than 12 months. Really.
Let's not blame that entirely on the NBN, because I think the telcos and the products that we're giving to consumers right now aren't right. Upload should be much higher on the agenda, full stop. So there he is. Hello, Scott.
Don't let me interrupt.
Well, it's good because I was just coming to your question. So you've come at just the right time. I will introduce you if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the technical issues, both to the viewers and to you, Senator Ludlam. Scott, thank you very much for joining us today, particularly with your very, very busy schedule. I know that yesterday you sat and listened to people talking about our industry, the media industry, and we certainly want to ask you a question about that toward the end of the chat. But today, of course, we're here to talk about the NBN. We've just been hearing from Jodie Sangster from ADMA and Ian McDonald, the Chief Disruption Officer, about the impact on our industry. So perhaps we can come to you and talk about, or perhaps we can now come to you and talk more about the benefits of the NBN on us as a community, but both on us as a business community as well. I think often we don't talk about those kind of benefits. We're really focused on the problem.
Yeah, well, the problems become a bit overwhelming in the last couple of years. Apologies that I'm 20 minutes late to join you. I could hear a fair bit of the earlier conversation though, so I've got a bit of a sense of what we're up to. And it would be easy enough to blame the NBN for the morning's disruption, but I think it was just the Parliament House firewall, to be honest. So apologies for being so late on. I think the benefits, was just talking this over with Dave, I don't know that the benefits of ubiquitous fast connectivity within our country and connecting us to the rest of the world are necessarily all that well understood. I think the basics are well understood of the importance of a telecommunications network as an enabler for all these other industries and for weaving us closer together with friends, colleagues, family, wherever they might be across distances. But I'm still really of the view that the major applications for really fast many-to-many communications, the main applications haven't been invented yet. I still think we're at a very, very early stage, and so it's difficult to predict. We were just discussing before, the value of whether or not we should use the 4K television as the key metric for at what point we start to run out of bandwidth, when actually television is the least interesting application of this technology. People are doing vastly more interesting things than high definition television. So I get that it's useful, but I suppose to my mind, we still haven't seen exactly how young people coming through are going to use this equipment yet.
That's exactly right. And I think that there is perhaps a lack of understanding with some. This is a lot more than just being used for Netflix. which is something that seems to get mentioned fairly often. It really is, underpins, from health to education. Of course, big impacts in the communications industry, which is what we're really here to talk about today. Scott, if I can just come back to you, and let's really start to talk about where we are at currently with the NBN. And one of the things that I highlighted just before you came on was how many people contacted me and said that I would really like to join in and listen today, but I'm unable to because I'm unable to even Skype. So the thought of actually logging onto a live video chat is just completely beyond them. Which I find, us in the city areas, when perhaps not as exposed to that as much as people in regional areas. So if you can comment on where we're at today and what the situation with the NBN is at today.
Well, that's a big one. I think there's no question at all that there's a digital divide. So as much as we talk about, the trouble that Australia Post is in, for example, the trouble that direct mail companies are in, the questions hanging over the existence of public libraries for the first time in 100 years. Those things are all premised on the fact that everybody has access to really high-speed connectivity, which we know is simply not true, and it's not going to be for a while yet. And as much as the digital divide is clearly stark between city and regions, there are still people in metropolitan areas who are stuck on pair-gain copper cables who aren't going to be able to. They're completely stuck until NBN finally rolls a truck past their premise. Where we're at today, and I know that it's a little bit of a theme, and I think we should hopefully we've got a little bit of time to talk about the problems, but spend most of the morning talking about the solutions, is the network is in a mess. We're in a very bad place where I think in the process of rolling out different railway gauges, and when they get to the state lines, they're not going to meet up and we're all going to have to change trains. It's a significant, probably more so than that. And it's been done because the network was politicised. There are important engineering debates to be had. There are market structure debates to be had. And Parliament is one good place for those conversations to happen. But the whole debate has been poisoned. And it was poisoned, I think, at the time because the Labor Party took such a strong and in many ways very simple proposal. And I know this is a little bit unorthodox in politics, but I do want to acknowledge Stephen Conroy. When he had the levers of power, he tried to do something I think profoundly important, both from a market structure side and from a technology and engineering side. And it was tarred with the same brush as everything else that Labor or the Greens had their fingers on, was that it had to be destroyed. So bravo, they've almost succeeded. I think there are pathways out, but we're in a pretty bad place at the moment.
I mean, and that's something that I do want to get to toward the end of the chat, is to talk about, okay, how can we get out of this? What is the path out? And Laurie Patton from Internet Australia put a very good article together on the Sydney Morning Herald this week saying that it isn't too late, there is a way out of this. Come back to that later. Jody, if I can come to you now and talk about everything that Scott just mentioned and, the mess that we seem to be in this regard, the two-state digital economy that we're in, or digital connectivity that we're in Australia. If I can come to you and just talk about what the impacts of that are on the Australian media marketing and advertising industries.
I alluded to a few of the impacts before about kind of where we're at the moment, but where our industry is going. And as kind of previously mentioned, obviously everything is moving. For us, our job as marketers is to connect with our customers and to make sure that we continually find new ways to connect and engage with our customers. And that is increasingly through digital channels. And we all know that. And actually, Scott mentioned, people are moving away from traditional channels, they're moving on to digital channels, and that is only going to continue. And also that was mentioned by Ian, the way that we now communicate with or engage with our customers is becoming much more around content and quite content heavy. And that is a trend that will absolutely continue as well. And when you look at some of the stats that go with it in terms of, video is just, is just kind of changed marketers' lives as to how they communicate with customers. In the last 6 months on Facebook, the amount of videos has gone from 4 billion a day to 8 billion a day. That's the growth that we're seeing, and that is kind of how we as organisations are trying to reach people. So I guess your question is, what's the impact if we don't get this right? The impact if we don't get this right, yes, it's going to impact marketing. Yes, it's going to leave us with a challenge as to the type of channels that we can use and the type of mechanisms that we can use to reach consumers. But I don't think that's the biggest issue. The biggest issue is the impact on business, because marketing at the end of the day drives business. If we can't use the digital channels properly to reach our customers, to converse with our customers, in the way that they expect to be communicated with, and if we can't provide the online experience, because basically marketing is driving people online or onto their mobile to have an experience, whether it be a shopping experience or other. If we can't deliver on those experiences, it impacts on our business. So ultimately, that's where it ends up. And I think another point that was mentioned earlier that I do think is really important here is the skills part of it. So we have got a real problem now, because not only have we not got kind of the infrastructure piece of it right, we haven't got the skills part of it right, and those two are kind of going along in tandem. And I think that we need to start looking at that seriously as an industry, because this is a multifaceted problem here, that if we don't get both of those things right, will significantly impact on business, therefore the economy, and our ability to compete in the global markets.
Could I just chime in on the back of that, Denise? The education part is absolutely critical. We have a talent drain from our industry going overseas. A lot of our brightest people have gone elsewhere to get the experience that they need. It's becoming increasingly difficult to get the right talent in the industry also, and a lot of companies in the industry are going overseas to find that now in order for us to stay ahead. I think, it's fairly anecdotal from my perspective, but I'd say that we are probably between 2 and 4 years behind on a number of different and critical things within the industry around digital, things like user experience. We're just not ahead of the game. And I think our opportunity around the digital economy is to lead. We should have our set sight being number one. There's no reason why we can't be that. We have the talent in the country. We don't necessarily have the experience. And back to Jodie's point there, the issues around education, if you look what's happening in other countries, Sweden's a very good example where they have Hyper Island, which is a government-sponsored university. And the calibre of grads coming out from that is exceptional. We've used a number of them. They're very, very good. I don't see the same coming from local establishments. So I think what we've got is we've got a pattern where people are learning by osmosis on the job in Australia. We're learning via patchwork band-aid solutions on other courses. So you might find that social media is dovetailed into a psychology degree or something like that. But we don't have dedicated resources for digital learning. And what digital learning we do have here is very expensive, to be quite honest. The other really important factor around the NBN debate and what the industry can do, and I'm not just talking about the ad industry, I'm talking about brands, etc., is that we have to design to the lowest common denominator. And this goes back 20 years. So when I started my agency 20 years ago, you have to design to the point where it reaches the most people. So if people are still on Internet Explorer 6, we still need to reach those people. And what it does is it dumbs down what we produce in the country. And the net effect of having a whole country where, or even a country which has only 20 to 30% of people on less than 25 megabyte connections, means we still have to design for that. We don't design for the maximum potential. And this is the reason we need to push the lowest common denominator up as high as it can be. And as soon as we have any proportion of the population that are down here, it limits brands, it limits the idea economy, it limits absolutely everything. And it's a critical point.
And I think one of the points that I made in the open letter was that it virtually, what this will do is it will virtually quarantine us. We'll be in a digital kind of quarantine. We'll be as you said, Ian, will be developing and producing to such a low common denominator, a bar that's not rising, that first of all, our people will be leaving because they'll want a better experience, but we'll find it very difficult to bring people in as well. The impacts are just huge. Ian, I just really wanted to pick up quickly on something that you and I discussed a little earlier today by phone. Through this open letter, some of the comments from people outside of our industry has seemed to be, well, why is this industry commenting? Like, we don't need better ads. This is, better ads, that's not what we need. Really just something that we spoke about was just defining exactly, how the communications industry fits in with the broader economy. If you can just give me just a moment on that, just a quick question.
Yeah. Look, I think, again, it's a bit of a misnomer that the industry just produces ads. Probably, and I remember I spent most of my career on the digital and innovation side within. So, we were the first company to build the first interactive Disney website worldwide here in Australia. We developed one of the first internet homes for Cisco, which was fully enabled back in 2000. And there's a lot of businesses that are doing a lot of things within our industry that are a long way removed from advertising. We are propelling the innovation. I think there's a culture of not being innovative in a lot of Australian companies. We have a lot of satellite sales offices, for instance, Google, Microsoft, Pandora, Spotify. They don't actually develop any product here, and we need to find reasons to get them here so that we can be working with them on other products. And we have that talent in the industry, and it's a long way from being just ads. We contribute a hell of a lot more, and that's just on the digital side. On the content creation side, it's equally important.
Can I add a little to that? I think where marketing has gone, and I completely agree, this is not about making ads, is now it's about customer experience, and it's making sure that there's an experience at every touch point with the customer, which really at the end of the day is what's driving business. So I think gone are the days where agencies just make ads. It's now looking at, okay, we as marketers are responsible for end-to-end customer experience, and it's the part that sits between the business and the customer and making those links so that business is possible. So that's kind of how things have changed. And just a couple of things to add to the education questions, because I know there's a couple of questions coming down the side here as to what we're even talking about here in terms of what skills do we need. The first thing is that we did a piece of research with AMIA, which is one of our associations, and the digital industry here in Australia has 10 times the number of people on 457 visas than other industries, and that is terrible. That means that haven't got homegrown talent. We're having to go elsewhere and bring people in. Part of that is down to the education that's available. The type of education that's required, we need people with digital skills, and that is both digital channel skills, but also coding skills. Those kind of more tactical or tangible skills. We need people with data skills desperately. We need many more people coming through with those skills. We need technologists and technology skills as well. And those programs are out there. We have our own program, but I think part of the disconnect here is that the universities haven't been able to keep up with the speed at which things are changing. So those university courses often don't have those subject matters within their programs. The government-funded programs have to be part of a scheme or an RTO, and again, it's quite cumbersome, and to actually kind of get the government funding to kind of push this out far and wide is really difficult to get. So there's a number of kind of challenges that sit around this, and I think if we could take off the shackles a little bit and say, okay, let's work much more closely with the government on the new way of educating, which is not degrees, it's not these long 5-year courses, it is short, sharp, tactical learning that we can take straight into the workplace, then we'll start making some progress. But it's a real struggle at the moment.
It is an absolute struggle. Scott, if I can come back to you now and talk a little about something that you touched on. So overwhelmingly to the open letter, and indeed Delimiter also picked up on that during the week. The feedback to the open letter was very positive. Everyone kind of agreed with the direction that I was taking it, that this was clearly an issue. But some comments were, well, we can't afford it. It was never going to happen fast enough. We don't need this level of connectivity. And I know that you touched on it before, but if you could perhaps give us an idea of how is it still being justified that we're still going down this incorrect path? It seems to me sometimes that everyone except a few Liberal Party members are agreeing that this is the correct path. Indeed, Sandy Plunkett, an old BRW colleague of mine, on Q&A on night, called this a national tragedy. Why are we still going down this path? Why aren't we changing?
Well, I think in a way it goes back to the way that the debate was politicised in particular during the 2010 and 2013 elections. And the fact that some of the media reporting, in a way, was actually quite counterproductive. There were elements of the commercial media that campaigned against a national broadband network. And as for why they did that, I guess it's anybody's guess. Probably all got different theories. And some of the technical questions and some of the market structure questions are a little bit complex. It's hard to get it into a soundbite. The fact is an end-to-end fibre network is scalable. It comes down to the switching gear that you can put on the end of it. You can upgrade that and you've got a network that'll do you for 100 years. And it's not as... it's a lot easier to just run an argument that it's too expensive, too slow, that Stephen Conroy didn't know what he was doing. It's easier to rip stuff down than it is to build stuff. You know, that phenomenon is probably as old as politics. Like I say, I think there's a way out, and I am actually quite optimistic about getting the project back on track, but we've got to take a really good, hard look at where we've got to.
I think Denise has vanished.
You're still on.
Scott, can I ask, what's your thoughts on what is the way out? What are the kind of the options that are available?
Look, to be honest, I think we're starting to see signs of it. It's a shame. I think we've still got Denise on the chat line, but not on the video. So I'm hoping that you can hear us. I think this open letter is helpful. It's actually people taking matters into their own hands and not letting the politicians have all of the airtime in the debate, and making sure that it stays really high on the political agenda during this election cycle, and making sure that the debate is really well informed. It doesn't have to be partisan, it doesn't have to be angry, it just has to be extremely well informed, and then I think we can get the project back on track. And like I say, the letter is one instance, and you could point to others, where particular industry groups or individuals are saying we're not going to leave the politicians to drive this debate by themselves. We all have a stake in this. I think that's really healthy.
I think, Scott, around information, I don't know if you saw this the other day, around just grassroots schooling and Sydney Grammar School talking about banning computers in the classroom. I feel personally that technology, just as a general subject matter, seems to be vastly misunderstood, and especially at grassroots level, where we have those sorts of comments made, which do seem misinformed. Do you have any opinion around that?
I think maybe sometimes we just oversimplify the effect of technology, and I don't think having ubiquitous fast telecommunications is necessarily going to be uniformly good for everybody. It carries some significant downsides, and you folks and the business that you're in, you grapple with questions of privacy and exploitation of people's private information every day. And I know there are whole disciplines and conversations that are sprung up around that. Similarly with the laptops thing, Kevin Rudd was going to put one into every classroom. I think it's healthy for kids to have a bit of outside time and that we're not always glued to screens. And anytime I see a really black and white position being taken on any kind of technology question, I figure it's when my profound ambivalence always comes back into play. This stuff is neither all good nor all bad.
Yeah, I think again, the debate around technology, it gets focused on particular things. I think technology within the classroom shouldn't be a debate around computers in the classroom. It should be a debate about the benefits of the technology across a whole range of subject matters. And I think as a country, what we do is we take this channel-based approach to everything. We try and put everything in a box, and we're not looking at digital as a platform, as a big picture event. And that's why I think it's really important to have this debate. I think, again, when you talk about advertising in the comms industry, you wouldn't probably associate digital as being something pertinent to it, but it absolutely is, and it's absolutely going to continue. And as an industry, if we don't have that backbone and we can't speak to consumers in the way that they're speaking to each other, then we are at a disadvantage.
Yeah, well, I thought that lowest common denominator argument that you made before was really interesting. Somebody a short time ago on the chat pointed out that 86% of Australian households have connectivity, so there's 1 in 6 who don't. Now, that's a big chunk of people. They might not want connectivity. It's just as likely that they do. They can't afford it, or they can't access it, or there are cultural issues in the way, or market issues, or whatever. And I just feel, before we kind of rush headlong into whatever the next craze is going to be, I suspect it's going to be VR, that we just pause and recall that not everybody is at the crest of this wave. Newspapers are in the process of figuring out whether they can stay in business or not. Like the daily broadsheets in Melbourne and Sydney might not exist in 3 to 5 years. So that means to get your news, you're going to need an internet subscription, a mobile phone subscription, and a handset, rather than just being able to pick up a newspaper at the deli. This stuff impacts people in very, very different ways.
I think there's been a bit of debate about VR recently. I don't know if you've heard much on it, Jody. But what I think is really interesting, because people talk about the NBN just being for high definition video. If you look at VR and you break it down technically, and Facebook talked about this fairly recently, is that the resolution you need on each eye to simulate reality, which is where it's trying to get to, is we need 16K on each eye.
Yeah.
Running at 240 frames a second.
Otherwise, it's going to make you feel really sick.
Yeah, it's fundamental for things like VR video conferencing. It fundamentally won't work where you're having to stream it. It's not so bad for computer gaming. There are all sorts of throttles and bottlenecks that come up. Of course, as you pointed out earlier, it's not just the fibre. But I think the interesting thing for me in terms of the technology is that nothing is going to beat fibre. And I think these arguments around, well, Wi-Fi will catch up, or there'll be a wireless technology, it's not. We really need to debunk that myth. It's not going to happen. Already, the theoretical limits on fibre, and we look at companies like BT and Huawei talking about real-world existing grade fibre running at 3 terabytes a second. I mean, that's where we could end up with fibre under the current or under a fibre to the premise network. So I think the problem for me and this lowest common denominator thing is we just start to rule ourselves out of the possibilities. And if we want an ideas economy, we need the backbone to build on.
Yeah. So I can. So I think Denise has dropped off completely, but she's posting questions. So we'll. I'm happy to kind of step in slightly and make sure that those questions are answered. And I do think, and there's two additional questions to this. One is, where does this put us on a worldwide stage? And that really is, for me, a real big concern. We are a very remote country. We do have great opportunities here, but if we don't get this right, what impact is this going to have on Australia's ability to compete globally? So I think to both of you, that's probably a question. And then I think we do need to get to where to from here. What from a government perspective, from a corporate perspective, what do we need to do? Where do we need to go? Scott, do you want to start?
I can kick off if you like. I think it's particularly pertinent for this audience is that we're talking to people by and large who are communications professionals, and communication has been a really big problem in this debate. There's a lot of misinformation floating around and arguments masquerading as technical issues that I think it's possible to clarify and hopefully reset and reboot the debate. And an election campaign is actually a really good time to do that. I don't think we should allow too much more lazy language around agility or innovation or connectivity with the rest of the world until we've cleaned up the mess that's been made in the last 3 or 4 years. It's not that the previous NBN was perfect or that its administration was perfect, and I think maybe a way of depoliticising it is admitting that there were mistakes made on both sides, but that we, for the same reason that we need rail gauges to be the same in the states and territories, or we need our electricity network to all run at the same voltage, we've got to put the weapons down and get back to the heart of the debate, which is that this is infrastructure that the country really needs. As I say, an election campaign is a good time to do that. My plea to you is don't let the politicians own the debate. Your communications professionals, please take up as much bandwidth on this as the debate unfolds as you can manage.
I think I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think the question around what does it mean to us going forwards, and I think there's some fairly good solid numbers and forecasts around the number of jobs that are going to disappear because of automation, because of data, where it's heading. We know that the landscape's going to change. I think the really interesting question is where the new jobs open up. And that's where I think we're a threat. And when we look at the jobs that are being replaced and the things that we do here now, for instance, call centres are looking at being automated. We've already had call centres go overseas. What happens when that's handled by really, really good AI, where you can't tell the difference whether you're talking to a human or not? And I say that because I've been speaking to a couple of people that are looking at that technology at the moment. It's very, very real, and those jobs are going to disappear.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that we've got the capability and ability to be coming up with those solutions, and not other countries using their backbone, their solid infrastructure backbone, to come up with those ideas. And I think I was listening to a radio interview the other day talking about mining and how successful Australia is at the moment in producing software for the automation of mining, and we're a world leader. And I think that's a great example that if you have the thing in your backyard, you're working with it in your backyard, you're going to produce the goods. If we have a limited scenario where we can't develop products because we have no reason to develop the products on a fast connection that everybody has, it's not going to happen. So we really have to shift the mindset. We have to say we can be number one on this. We can be a global leader. And I think we're just throttling ourselves presently. And the solutions that are on the table, I don't see realistically that we're going to be competing on a world stage because others are moving ahead.
Okay, so we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I'm stepping in here to kind of keep things moving. I'm going to ask anyone who's listening, if you've got questions, probably now's the time to do it. So if you can type your questions in, I'll make sure that we get to them. But while we're doing that, Scott, I think everybody's quite interested in your day yesterday that you had in Canberra, talking about the media industry reform. Can you give us an update of what happened yesterday and what your day was like?
Well, less than you probably think. It was the way that the debate is unfolding is in a less interesting way than it probably could. I'm also taking pause as to whether we should call it media reform. Something a bit fascinating is unfolding, that the government is using emerging digital platforms and new media, or even existing media for that matter, so your Crikeys or Huffington Posts or Junkie or these really interesting new platforms that people are engaging with and getting news and current affairs in quite unorthodox ways as an excuse to further partially deregulate old media. And you can sense the sort of seeds of truth in there, is that our media laws are analog and yet they're operating in a digital age. But of course, all they've come up with is not how to encourage more audiences onto those platforms, or to encourage startups, or to provide any kind of concessions or ways for these new emerging platforms to gain audience share, which is still thoroughly dominated by the 20th century incumbents. It's that we're just proposing to take the brakes off further consolidation in the industry, and it will not necessarily in an avalanche sense, but it will, if the government's rather narrow proposals get up, we will simply see another brief wave of mergers and acquisitions and less diversity in the media landscape, and then things will jam up. So I feel a bit like there's an opportunity being missed here. The internet is being used as a provocation and justification to do something that actually completely sidesteps the major transformations that are going on in news media at the moment. So we've got to figure out how to have a more interesting conversation, which I feel like is partly up to us.
Yeah, and do you have a position on kind of how you think we should be approaching media reform?
Look, the last time anybody tried to do it in a holistic way was in the Convergence Review of 2012.
Yeah.
It wasn't perfect, but a lot of very bright people, put a heap of energy into that. How do you regulate it? What do you leave well alone and not even try and regulate? I would like to go back to some of those conversations. And I'd also, I think, rather than simply deregulating existing media entities, I want to look at direct support for community broadcasters, for example, for emerging platforms, for community broadcasters. There's all these voices that are already there that are kind of being starved of audiences and starved of funding. So rather than simply, at the moment, the debate's been driven entirely by the commercial proprietors. So I would like to see the debate start to be driven by, well, what is the future for media? What's the business model that allows you to put a good investigative journalist into the field to go and piss off powerful people? And it's not at all clear what that model is as we're watching Fairfax kind of falter and stumble. I think that's the debate that we should be having, not whether Channel 9 and Fairfax should merge.
Yep. Ian, what do you think the impacts of media reform are on our industry?
Jodie, totally not my area. I'm going to stay out of that one.
You can stay out of
that digital future or anything. Yes, it's one where I'll probably just stay out of it.
Fair enough. So I think
perhaps I could just bring the debate back to our industry very quickly as a whole, and how we can perhaps change and shape the NBN issue. And I think it's unfortunate these things do become too political. I think us as an industry, all we want is the best that we can be and best that we can have in terms of everything. I don't think there's much doubt. I've never spoken to anybody in the industry on this debate that isn't saying, why aren't we sticking with the original plan? We all need and want the best. It's a unified thing from our industry. So my question back to you, Jodie, would be, what do we need to do as an industry? Is it the bodies, the IAB, AMIA, etc., coming together to unite around this and put something forward? And Scott, back to you, what should we do and how should we present that? What do we need to do? Because it is important for us.
Yeah, so I can answer that from an industry association perspective, and I think Denise kind of has taken the first step to kind of put it out there to say, look, we've got an issue here. And I don't think the full extent of the impact that this can have on our industry is understood. And I think what we can do as an industry association is to start bringing that information together so that there's a much clearer picture around how does this impact not just marketing, advertising, media, but also how does this impact business moving forward. And so we've got a bit of clarity around that, because we just go about our daily jobs and we're doing what we're doing, and this is not top of mind for people in their everyday lives. And I think if we do the right job as an association, we can bring it so that it is top of mind for businesses in Australia, so that it can be an issue that they can get behind. So I think there's that, and I do think the associations need to come together on that, because everyone's got a role to play and a part to play in that, and bringing those memberships together. And then each of us we all have a lobbying or a representation role, and the viewpoint of the industry needs to be represented from a unified voice, and that's really the next kind of step that needs to happen. As Scott was saying, we need this debate to be top of mind, we need it to be constant, and we need the conversation to continue to happen. And I think that's where associations can play a great role.
Great. We know that it's possible. If I can just jump in, because in the 2010 election, it was telecommunications issues were actually top of mind for a lot of people, and they were among the issues that got the two country independents, Mr. Windsor and Oakeshott, over the line to support a minority Gillard government on the basis of that their NBN model was smarter than the alternative that was proposed. I've been watching the chat stream as we go, and we should give a shout out to Denise, who's throwing a bunch of good ideas and comments up onto the thing while not being able to participate directly. Is that keep the message really simple. We want a network that's fit for purpose. It's got to be fibre end to end until you get to the kind of diminishing returns. Now, the former government, with the support of the Greens and the Independents, figured that was at about 93%. You get diminishing returns, and you fill in the outstations and the really remote communities with satellite and fixed wireless. For the other 90, 97, 93, 94%, let's keep it really dead simple. We need an end-to-end fibre network that can scale as demand scales, and now it's over to the politicians to figure out how to deliver it. But I think we shouldn't allow it to get any more complex than that. That's what industry is demanding. That's what the community is demanding. Now politicians, at every public meeting, at every Facebook chat, every time somebody sends a tweet, hang on them and don't let them wriggle away.
Yeah. And I do think, adding to that point, in terms of kind of the industry role, a lot has been talked about today around, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think we need to get that bit right first and really clarify what this position is, because, you know, even some of the questions coming through are kind of going, well, where are we? What is the real position? So I think that needs to be clarified first, and then kind of from an industry perspective, making sure that this is a top of mind conversation.
Yeah, I think also that the innovation.gov.au is a good movement. It has a long way to go, but we are, I think, as a nation, trying to change. We have a whole heap of issues beyond the NBN which centre around technology, which we need to address as time goes on. I'm wondering and hoping that there's more of a place for the NBN to exist within that innovation.org debate as well, and maybe that's a way through.
Yeah, I think the change in language is good. Like, we've got a Prime Minister who's technically literate, who clearly cares about the medium, and he used to work in the industry. I think I've just been watching Paul Keating scroll past on my Twitter feed saying that unfortunately he's a cherry on top of a compost heap. There are some folks within that administration who thoroughly disagree. I don't understand the motivation, to be honest. I don't understand how the National Party have been part of letting this happen. But we do live in a democracy and things can change. And in terms of just being reminded, the session that we had in the NBN committee going back about 2.5 or 3 weeks with the Internet Association, with Laurie Patton and some others from the Internet Association, they gave us the most lucid and bullshit-free description of the why and also the how of the NBN debate. It's on my Facebook at the moment, but you can find that. It's on the committee website as well, the NBN Select Committee. Those are the folks that I think we should be listening to around how to run the argument and how to keep it really simple.
So I think we're out of time, unfortunately. So we started a little late, but I think we got to most of the subject matters that we were going to cover for today. And I think, in summary, I think everyone's in agreement. We know what the solution is that we need. I think a couple of things that have come out of this today are really about let's get this conversation back on track and stop letting the noise that's out there create difficulties around the conversation, and that we do need to now come together as organisations and as an industry and look at the impact that it does have on the industry and making sure that the voice is heard. So I also think that today has been a prime example of why we need high-speed internet. We've had all sorts of problems. So thank you everyone for bearing with us, and thank you for Denise, who's sitting there in the background watching this. I wonder if you did this on purpose. So a huge thank you, Ian, and a huge thank you, Scott, for joining us today. It's been a great debate, and thank you all for joining us as well. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jodie. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. See you later.